Hello and welcome to Bookmanic Mike's channel. Glad to be here. Still doing early channel stuff. I'm still new to booktube. This is my third video that I've ever made. So I apologize for it to be, if it doesn't sound right or it doesn't look right. There's no edits. I don't know how to edit yet. So I'm still working out the kinks. I'm still learning, but I want to be part of this community. So I'm making this video here. And today, my video is going to be about my Omnibus collection. Because to me, comic books are books too. And I love them. I don't read them all the time, but especially when I have like periods of slumps where I get tired of reading novels or whatever genre I'm into, I kind of cut it with Omnibus or a graphic novel. And it helps things keep moving, and it's a lot too. Like these stories are great. Some of these omnibuses are thousands of pages long, and so to me they're books, and I count them with my Goodreads challenge, and they're fun. And so I'm going to talk about my entire collection, what I've read, what I'm reading, and what I plan to read. So first I'm going to go into what I've already read. The first one is Wolverine Volume 1. And this is the basic comic book from back in the day in the 90s when he had his own run. I got this mostly for nostalgia because when I was a kid, I used to read these all the time. I have most of the individual issues, but there's just something about having it in the omnibus format that really feels good. I love having the physical edition of it. I also have Volume 2, and I plan to get Volume 3 when it comes out. Next up is The Amazing Spider-Man. This is when Todd McFarlane did his run of drawing of Spider-Man before he went into Spawn. And this was some of my favorite comics too growing up. This is mostly from nostalgia. Then I got Deadpool Beginnings. This was just because I never read Deadpool and I wanted to. He's such a famous and popular character that I wanted to get to know his comic a little bit better. I remember when he first came out in X-Force, and his character is so different now compared to before. So that is Deadpool. Then I got Aquaman by Jeff Johns. This was pretty good. It's not the greatest. It's very classic style of comic books from back in the day, the whole superhero, supervillain kind of thing. It was an interesting story. I never knew the Aquaman character, so that's why I got this omnibus, mostly just out of curiosity. It's not my favorite, but it wasn't bad. Next is X-Men, Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. So this is another one that I got for nostalgia reasons. I grew up with this comic in the 90s, and so it was fun to read it again and to have it in this format. Next is Lock and Key by Joe Hill, Gabriel Rodriguez, and Jay Fotos. So Lock and Key, very dark comic. Very good too. I watched the show on Netflix. This is obviously a lot better. The show on Netflix is not bad, but this is definitely worth the read. Especially, it's the entire comic book run or graphic novel run. So you're getting the whole story here. Ooh, I'm sweating. Okay, let's keep it going. Here's another one for the X-Men. It's another series. I think it's the continuation of Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. Here's an interesting one. He-Man, the Masters of the Universe in the Omnibus. This is like the entire comic book run when it was on DC. This was super interesting. I did not think I would like this. I just got it out of curiosity, and because it's just so big. Look at this book. It's huge. And I was like, I had to read it. And when I started reading this, I really got into this. There's some dark, mature themes in this, and I was super surprised. I mean, because growing up with He-Man and the cartoons, just very childish, very immature, but it was fun at the time. And so it was mostly nostalgia. But there's something new that's brought with this series that was really interesting. So I enjoyed this a lot. Next, I got Batman, the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run. This is volume 1. I never read Batman when I was a kid, so I was like, I gotta catch up. And this was really good. This was surprising because I never really liked the idea of a Batman comic when I was a kid. This is Skyward. This is from Image. This is an interesting story about a world where there's no gravity. And the question is how did the gravity leave? And it's like years later, the main character, I forgot her name, she's a baby when the gravity leaves. So she's a teenager now, she's a young adult. This is mostly like a young adult story. And she's trying to find out where her father is because she thinks her father's still alive. Her father disappeared on the day that gravity disappeared as well. So it's tied into the whole mystery. It's a pretty good story. It's not great. It's not that long either, but this is the entire collection. And if you're interested in it, I think you should pick this up. It's good. Got Cosmic Ghost Rider, which is just weird. Cosmic Ghost Rider. So I had to check that out. That's good too. Actually interesting. The all new Wolverine, since I'm a Wolverine fan. This is a female. This is when X-23 became the new Wolverine, which was really cool. I liked her as a character, and then her becoming Wolverine wasn't that big of a change from her main character, but it was definitely interesting and fun to read. Then I had to get Spider-Gwen after reading All New Wolverine because they have some crossovers, and this is from a universe where Gwen Stacy doesn't die and she becomes Spider-Man instead, or Spider-Girl, I guess you should say. And it's really funny. The writing is spectacular. This is one of the best parts of this book. I was surprised to see how much I like this. Then I have Batgirl, which was also good. Ties into the whole Bat family thing with Batman. And very interesting. Gail Simone writes this. And wonderful, wonderful stories. Now here's some of my favorite ones. Ex Machina, or Brian K. Vaughan. He does the Saga series. And this is like, I think, some of his early work. It's not as good as Saga, but you can tell he has some really good ideas here. His writing is starting to develop. He's starting to find a voice here. The story is super interesting. It kind of falls towards the end, my enjoyment of it, but I read the whole thing in one sitting. It was just so cool. And I have Why the Last Man, which is another of Brian K. Vaughan's work. This comes after Ex Machina, and his writing is a lot better here. The story is a lot more interesting. It's about the last man on Earth. Everyone with the Y chromosome disappears or dies horribly. And so it's sort of a post-apocalyptic story. But there's enough people to keep the world going because it's all women. And he's the last man. And so the question is, why is he the last man? And of course, he becomes like a commodity amongst the warring power struggle that develops because of what happened. And so it's really good. There was a show on Hulu that was also very interesting that I watched. But you should read this. It's interesting. Then I have Doom Patrol. And this was just weird. This Grant Morrison. This is just a weird story, and I loved it. I loved it because of how crazy weird it was. So if you're into weird stories, this is definitely the one for you. And I love the show on HBO Max, too. I watch the show a lot. It's one of my favorite superhero shows out right now. So I'm going to get into what I want to read. And some of these are still in the same plastic. Get some coffee. Oh, no, this one I actually read. This is one of the last ones that I read. This is Hellblazer by Garth Ennis. Super dark, this guy. He's like the epitome of anti-hero. And it's super dark. Like the whole thing. I hope when you read this, don't read this when you're like in a depressed mood. Like, this is super dark. But it was good. Very good. I love anything Garth Ennis does. Okay, so here we go with the stuff that I want to read. The Planetary Omnibus from DC. I don't even know what this is about. It just looked interesting. And so I'm looking forward to reading this. Anything that's different and new. So this, I'm waiting for a good rainy day when I'm tired of reading Stephen King or horror or, you know, literary fiction or whatever. I'm waiting for a good time to read this. I have X-Men Inferno Prologue. This is from the Nostalgia pack here, where I read this as a kid, and I'm going to reread this one day when I feel like, you know, reminiscing. The Once and Future King. It's just from Boom Studios. I got this because I wanted something different. Something that I don't normally read, and it looks interesting. I heard it was good, so I just picked it up. And it's not that long, so I'll read this one day. Darth Vader Star Wars. This is because I never read Star Wars as a kid. I loved the movies, but I never got into the lore. And I think that if I picked up the novels when I was a kid in the 90s, I probably would be like a super nerd for Star Wars, but I just never got the chance to pick that up. And so I didn't really get into it, but I'm hoping to get into it now. Here's a big boy. Deathstroke by Christopher Priest. It's super big. I know the character from watching some of the cartoons and some of the shows or whatever. In some movies he pops up. I don't really know his character, which is why I got this, because I consider he's, you know, it's just more out of curiosity. And one of these days I'll read it. It's a lot to read. So I just got to be in the mood for it. Infinity by Starlin and Hickman. I loved the Infinity Gauntlet series when I was a kid. That was the best comic book series that I've ever read. Hands down. That's not even a question. So I had to pick this up to see what I missed, because I didn't read the entirety of everything that's involved with it. There's so much that's involved with the storyline. And I have, let's see, this is Lucifer Volume 2. And Lucifer Volume 1. And from what I understand, this is a spin-off of the Sandman universe, Neil Gaiman. There's a show on Netflix, or it was like a long-running show on NBC. I've never watched it, and so I want to read that just out of curiosity. The Fall of the Mutants, X-Men. This is from a long time ago, I think the 80s. And I read some of this as a kid, but I don't remember the story, so I want to reread it. I got Batman Volume 2, to continue what I read in Volume 1. X-Men Inferno, which is the actual Inferno event from the 80s and 90s, or just 90s, which is a weird story. I loved it. It focuses on Ilyana Rasputin, which is Colossus's sister, and she's stuck in another dimension because as a kid she was a mutant and her power was to move to the demon dimension, and as a kid she didn't understand that. So when she moved to that demon dimension, she got stuck and grew up in that dimension, and she's crazy as a result of it. And she becomes like a demon queen in this. Really interesting stuff. Crazy stuff. And I have Gotham Central by Brubaker, Rucka, Lark, Guardiano, and Kano. This was interesting to me because it doesn't focus on Batman. It focuses on the cops in Gotham. And so it's more like detective stories. And Batman just happens to be in the background, but it focuses on the actual cops. So these are cop stories. So I thought that was interesting. I'm gonna read that. And I had to get Aliens, because I never read the comic for Aliens, and I love the movies, and I love the universe they created. And so I wanted to read some of the comics. This is just Volume 1, and this is the only volume I have for that. And the last one I have here is Books of Magic. So like Lucifer, this is a spin-off of Sandman, and it revolves around some kids that know magic, I guess. I don't know. I had to get it because it revolves around the Sandman universe. I don't have the Sandman Omnibus because those are super expensive, but I have read them. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. And what I'm reading now is Dr. Aphra, the Star Wars. So I'm like 200 pages into this right now. I read it when it hits me that I want to read it. I'm reading a lot of different things, but so whenever I pick up this, I'll let you know. It's super interesting story so far. The character is sort of like a parody of Han Solo. She's an archaeologist, which is like, I guess, a joke about Han Solo being Indiana Jones. And but she's evil, and she's sort of a mercenary. I wouldn't say evil, but she works for Darth Vader in the beginning. She has two androids who's like C-3PO and R2-D2, but they're like murder bots. They're crazy, and all they want to do is torture and fight. And they have a Wookiee who's I think his name is Black Chrysanthemum, and he's a mercenary. He's not like the Wookiee we all come to know and love. He's like evil. So it's funny that, you know, she's like the antithesis of the Han Solo character. So if you think that's interesting, you should pick this up. I'm enjoying it so far. Like I said, I'm only 200 pages in. I think it's like 1,200 pages long. But yeah, I gotta learn to edit so I could edit out like me wiping my sweat because it's hot in here. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's it for my Omnibus collection. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, press the like button, leave a comment, and tell me what you think about Omnibus. If you're reading any, tell me what you're reading. And if not, that's cool too. Or subscribe for more videos. I think the next video I'm gonna do is gonna be something with spooky season, or the horror books I'm reading for October, because I'm reading mostly horror books. Anyway, thanks a lot. This is Book Manic Mike. Peace out.